Good evening, 법률스님. By chance, I came across your 증문즉설 on YouTube, and it brought a sense of relief to my heart. I realized that the worries I had been carrying were not as significant as I once thought. Now, as a mother of three, I feel a bit of more at peace. About 10 years ago, I fled to the United States to escape domestic violence from my ex-husband. I chose to marry him because having no surviving parents or siblings, I longed to create a big family of my own through marriage. However, due to the domestic violence, I ultimately had to end the relationship. And now I live in the United States. Although I don't wish to maintain contact with my children's father, given that I have no family, I actively encourage my children to stay connected with their father's family, as they are the only blood relatives my children have. Recently, I explained to my eldest child why we had to adultly leave for the United States without their father. After hearing this, my child has been deeply disappointed in him and struggled to understand how he could act as though nothing had happened when we visited Korea 2 years ago. Without offering any apology, it seems my child is upset by this awareness. I'm wondering, for the sake of my children, whether I should continue to shield them from the full truth, or if I'm being open and honest with my children as the right decision. I would appreciate your guidance, 스님.
사람은 누구나 다 자기 아버지나 어머니, 부모가 훌륭하기를 원합니다.
So every child wants their parents to be good people.
자기 아버지가 나쁜 사람이라고 했을 때 스스로 자존감이 떨어질 수밖에 없습니다.
If you think that your father is a bad person, then that affects your self-esteem.
남이 우리 아버지를 욕을 할 때는 그래도 내가 변명거리가 있습니다.
If somebody else, a stranger, criticize your dad, you still have some excuse.
왜냐하면 너가 잠을 알고 있다 이렇게 말하면 되니까요.
You can say you don't really know my dad.
근데 어머니가 아버지를 만약에 비난한다면 그렇지가 않습니다.
But if my mother criticized my father, then you can't escape.
어머니가 나에게 거짓말할 리가 없지 않습니까?
Because my mother would not tell me a lie.
그러니까 아버지가 나쁜 사람이라는 게 아주 분명해집니다.
So in that sense, it becomes really clear that my dad is not a good person.
반대로 어머니가 거짓말을 한다면 어떻겠습니까?
But on the other hand, imagine if the child thinks that my mother is lying.
자식에게 거짓말하는 어머니가 나쁜 사람이 됩니다.
And my mother, who's a liar to me, to her own children, becomes a bad person.
그렇기 때문에 여러분들이 부부가 서로 비난하게 되면 자녀는 대부분 이 정신적인 혼란 또는 분열 현상이 일어납니다.
So that causes a kind of a psychological issue, right? Because confusion among in the child if the mother and father criticize each other.
아내나 남편 누가 나쁜 사람은 아닙니다.
Whether it's a husband and wife, no one is a bad person here.
서로가 안 맞는 거죠.
You had your own issues.
헤어지는 것은 문제가 전혀 없습니다.
And there's no problem for you splitting up.
내가 그를 선택했다가 내가 그를 포기하는 거잖아요.
Because you chose him as your husband, then you gave up on him as your husband.
나쁘기 때문에 포기했다가 아니라 나는 그런 너희 아빠를 내가 내 수준에서는 감당하기가 어렵기 때문에 내가 이런 선택을 했다고 말하는 게 좋습니다.
So I think it's better for you to explain that you divorced him or you left him, not because he was a bad person. It was because you could not deal with the situation.
But he's a bad person.
나쁜 사람입니다.
그렇게 하면 애들에게 나쁘게 됩니다.
But if you do that, then it's not a good effect on your children.
그 아이들은 자기 아버지가 나쁜 사람이라는 데서 벗어날 수가 없습니다.
Then your child cannot escape from the fact that their dad is a bad person.
아버지가 엄마하고 맞지 않을 수는 있습니다.
I mean, they can accept the fact that you guys separated as a couple because you were incompatible.
네, 그것은 나쁘다는 것과는 성격이 다릅니다.
But that's different from bad person.
그렇기 때문에 아까 첫 번째 질문자도 있었지만은 이혼을 하더라도 우리는 아이의 아빠로서 아이의 엄마로서 존중해야 합니다.
So, we had the first questioner as well. You can get divorced, but at the same time, you can maintain that respect as co-parents of the same children.
우리가 안 맞는 것은 성인끼리의 문제이지 아이들의 문제는 아닙니다.
Because your problem is a problem between two adults. It's not a problem for the children.
그렇기 때문에 이것은 성인들이 어른이 책임을 져야지 그 책임을 아이들에게 전가하는 것은 맞지 않다는 거예요.
So that, that responsibility should remain with the adults. It should not be handed down to your children.
내 아이기 때문에 이것은 내 것이라는 사고가 어쩌면 강한지도 모르겠습니다.
Perhaps you feel a possessiveness or ownership over your children because they are your children.
내가 저 사람을 나쁘다 하면 너희들도 나쁘다고 따라해야 된다 하는 관점이 있는지도 모르겠습니다.
Maybe you have this, perspective, subconscious perspective that you think their father is bad, therefore your children should also think their father is bad.
이것은 아이들을 한 사람의 독립된 인격으로 인정하지 않는 것을 의미합니다.
That means you're not recognizing your children as independent agents.
아이들은 한 사람의 독립된 인격입니다.
But your children are independent agencies.
부모라면 자식이 올바르게 자라도록 도와야 합니다.
And as a parent, you want to help them grow up right.
나를 위해서 자식이 있는 것이 아닙니다.
The children do not exist for me.
아이들을 위해서 부모가 있는 것입니다.
I exist for the children.
아이들이 나하고 같이 지내는 것이 아이들에게 좋다 하면 나는 어떤 어려움이 있더라도 아이를 보살펴야 합니다.
If the children are better off with me, no matter what challenges I face, I should keep the children with me.
아이들이 아버지나 다른 사람하고 있는 것이 나하고 있는 것보다 아이들에게 좋다면 나는 아무리 아이들이 보고 싶어도 아이들을 떠나주어야 합니다.
But if the children are better off with the parents, with a father or somebody else, then no matter how pained you are, how much you may miss your children, you should let them go.
즉 자식은 나의 애완용 동물이나 어떤 소유품이 아니라 독립된 인격이고 그들이 커나가는데 도움이 되는 역할을 내가 하는 겁니다.
In other words, your children are not your pets or are not your possessions. They are independent agencies that you are there in your role as parents to help them grow into independent adults.
그러니까 아이들을 누가 키울 것인가, 아이들을 접견권을 어떻게 할 것인가 이런 것은 아이를 중요시한 게 아니라 어른들끼리의 권리를 논하는 것입니다.
So when you discuss custody, when you discuss other issues related to divorce, you're not putting the children in the center. You are actually negotiating the rights of parents among each other.
저는 그것은 아이들에게 도움이 되지 않는다고 생각합니다.
So I don't think that helps with the children.
Actually, my question was, should I be open with my kids what happened in the past in Korea? When I shared with my son, he was struggling to know the truth. So my question was, should I be open and honest with my children, or just like Sunim said, being a good parent and just covering up? And
자기가 하는 말이 솔직하고 진실이라고 말하는데 그것은 진실이라고 말할 수는 없습니다. 자기의 관점에서 하는 말이죠.
So you insist what you said, what happened in the past, because when you left him, that situation, you're saying that's what happened, that's the truth of the situation, but even that is just merely your perspective.
지금 같은 감정에서 그 사람이 나쁘다 하는 관정에서 얘기하면 자기가 어떤 얘기를 해도 나는 옳고 그 사람은 틀렸다 하는 관점에서 얘기를 할 수밖에 없습니다.
Because if you approach that story from the perspective that he is a bad person, then you are already making a value judgment and you are really relaying that story from a self-centric perspective.
그것은 말을 하지 않는 것보다 더 못합니다.
That actually is worse than not saying at all.
그러나 그런 것을 제거하고 그냥 자기가 왜 헤어졌는지를 얘기할 수 있다면 그것을 숨길 필요는 없다고 생각합니다.
But if you can actually remove that emotion or that value judgment from that story, then I don't think that story, I think you can be transparent with your children about why you left.
아이들이 그런 얘기를 듣고 충격을 받았다 하는 것은 아버지가 나빴다는 얘기가 되기 때문에 충격을 받는
And
것입니다.
I think your son was in shock and had a hard time dealing with this because the lesson learned from that story that your son got was that his dad was a bad person.
자기 아들을 만약에 자기 남편이 만약 짐승 같은 놈이다 그러면 그대로 적용하면 자기 아들은 짐승의 아들이다 이렇게 되지 않습니까?
So if you feel like your ex-husband is a bad person, is no better than an animal, a beast, then your child becomes a son of a beast.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. And I don't agree.
그러니까 자기 남편이 나쁜 사람이라면 그 자기의 과거의 남편, 즉 아이들의 아빠가 나쁜 사람이라면 아이는 나쁜 사람의 자식이라는 뜻입니다.
Basically, if you say your ex is a bad person, your children become, children of a bad person.
They're different. My son is not my father. I mean, not my ex-husband. I mean, Sunim said, if I describe my ex-husband as a bad person, that means my son is the blood of my ex-husband, right? But I don't agree because my children will blame me because I left their father behind in Korea and I brought them, without him. So.
만약에 아이들에게 아빠가 나쁜 사람이라는 얘기를 할 수밖에 없다면 안 하는 것보다 못합니다.
So if you have no choice, if you feel like you have no choice but tell your children that their father was a bad person, I think it's better not to say that.
너희들은 내가 낳았다.
And say, you are my children.
아버지는 모른다.
I don't know who the dad is.
나중에 크면 얘기해 줄게.
I'll tell you about your dad when you grow up.
이건 자기 선택이에요.
It's your choice.
My son got hurt because 2 years ago we visited Korea and my ex-husband acted like nothing happened and he didn't even apologize. And that's why my son got really hurt. And I'm a survivor of domestic violence. If I were still in Korea, I would be die by him.
네, 남편이 자기를 폭력한 것은 폭력범 범죄입니다.
So the fact that your husband hit you means that he is a criminal, right? He's a violent criminal.
그러니까 신고해서 법의 심판을 받아야 합니다.
And he should be reported and be forced to face justice.
그러나 자신의 남편이기 때문에 감옥에 면회는 가야 합니다.
But but nevertheless, even if he's in prison, you should go see him because he's still your husband.
I already did 15 years ago in Korea, but the police said this is a family stuff. So they didn't help me. That's why I had to escape from there.
그러니까 그것이 내 아들이든 내 부모든 내 자식이든 폭력을 행사한 것은 범죄에 들어갑니다.
So whether it's somebody, is your husband, whether it's your parents, whether it's your own children, if they lash out in violence, that's a crime. So they become criminals.
범죄를 저질러도 내 부모는 부모고 내 형제는 형제고 내 자식은 자식인 겁니다.
They may be criminals, but they're still your husband, your parents, or your children.
우리는 내 형제라 하면 범죄를 저질러도 그것을 덮으려고 합니다.
But if they're my relatives, we tend to want to cover up even their crimes.
그래서 그 사람을 더욱더 나쁘게 하고 사회 정의를 해칩니다.
Then we cause hurt to the cause of social justice and make a bad situation worse.
그렇기 때문에 그것이 누구든 법을 어겼다 하면 법의 심판을 받게 해야 합니다.
So no matter who it is, if they have gone against the law, they should face justice.
그러나 그가 어떤 잘못을 저질렀다 하더라도 부모는 부모고 자식은 자식이고 남편은 남편인 것입니다.
But whatever crimes they committed, they are still your husband, your parents, or your children.
우리 사회에서 우리 주위에 내 친구가 범죄를 저질렀다 하더라도 그런 범죄를 저질렀지만은 역시 나의 친구입니다.
And so my friend might have committed a crime, but he's a criminal now, but he's still my friend.
우리가 그래야 범죄를 저지른 사람도 돌아와서 가족과 함께 살 수 있고 사회에 복귀할 수 있는 거 아닙니까?
You know, that's the way for them, you know, after paying for their crimes, can come back and to rehabilitate themselves and be with their families again.
질문자처럼 생각하면 한번 잘못을 저지르는 사람은 영원히 이 사회에서 추방해야 된다는 관점과 같습니다.
Because if you think, according to your perspective, a person who has committed crime once should be forever shut out from this society.
그렇기 때문에 그 남편이 폭력을 했다면, 남편이 돈을 훔쳤거나 남편이 성추행을 했거나 범죄에 해당되는 것은 당연히 그것이 누구든 법의 처벌을 받게 해야 합니다.
So if your ex-husband hit you, raped you, or committed other violence upon you, then he should be facing the justice.
그러나 어떤 범죄를 저질러 했다 해도 우리가 미워해야 할 필요는 없습니다.
But just because he committed a crime does not necessarily mean you have to hate him.
그렇기 때문에 이 문제가 해결이 안 된 겁니다.
That's why we can't solve this problem.
미워하는 것은 자신을 괴롭히는 것입니다.
Because hatred is really self-suffering.
그래서 당신은 그 남자로부터 아직 독립이 되지 않는 겁니다.
That's why you're not, even now, you're not free yourself from that person.
그 미움을 버려야 그 남자로부터 완전히 독립된 자기 인생을 살 수 있는 겁니다.
You can truly only liberate yourself from that person once you stop hating.
미워하는 것은 자기가 볼 때는 현명한 것 같지만은 그것은 자기를 괴롭히는 어리석은 행위입니다.
You might think that your hatred is justified. It's a wise reaction to have to what you suffered, but it is an action that actually brings upon your own suffering.
Thank you.
좀 더 괴롭게 살 수밖에 없겠습니다.
Then you have no choice but to continue to suffer.
네, 여기 얘기하세요.
Please, you want to share your experience?
I heard that she needs to think about the kids because I have the same situation when I get divorced and my kids were 8 years old and 2 years old at that time. And I constantly talk with my friends telling them how bad was my ex-husband. But I didn't realize that my kids hear everything and they suffer too much, but they didn't look like they were suffering. They were excellent kids, they go to college, they have degrees, but after when my older son started his families, everything go down. And now my both kids are with psychiatrists because they were with drugs, alcohol at the adult age, because they were suffer for all the words that they heard from me. And I hope she realized that it's important that she stop saying something bad about their parents because the kids lost their self-esteem and destroy their lives.
네, 여기까지 하도록 하겠습니다. 아직은 자기를 돌아볼 만한 지금 상태가 아닌 것 같습니다.
So I think, you need some more time maybe to be more self-reflective about your actions.
자기가 한 것이 자기가 괴로운 만큼 이상으로 아이들에게 자기가 고통을 줬다는 것을 나중에 발견하게 되면 또 후회할 겁니다.
Because if you discover later on that you have actually passed down your own suffering to your children, allow it to amplify itself, then you'll engage in regrets at that time.
내가 괴로웠다고 내 아이를 괴롭혀서는 안 됩니다.
But just because you suffer doesn't mean your children has to.
어떤 괴로움이 있었다 하더라도
No matter what
그것은
kind of suffering.
내 산에서 감당하고 우리 아이에게는 전이 되지 않도록 해야 합니다.
That you should handle it at your level and prevent that being passed down to your children.
그러나 우리 대부분 어리석기 때문에 부모로부터 받은 괴로움을 자기가 계승하고 그 괴로움을 또 자녀에게 물려주는 것이 일반적입니다.
But because we're all foolish, we tend to inherit our parents' suffering and then also pass that down to our children.